Hello and welcome to Multimedia Plus Online Television News. Top stories in this edition. Magistrate Hannah Boni of Magistrate Court No. 1 has sent Mohamed Kanu and 30 others to Pademba Road Male Correctional Center for larceny. Residents within the Wilberforce Barracks raises concerns on improper dump sites in their community. The Executive Director of Water Sanitation and Hygiene Network, WashNet, Musa Ansumana Soko, has said that 57% of Sierra Leoneans do have access to water, but only 15% have access to sanitation. 28% of citizens defecate in the open. Well, all of the stories and more are all lined up into this news broadcast with me, Lucy Emanet Aliu. And now for the news in details. The Executive Director of Water Sanitation and Hygiene Network, WashNet, Musa Ansumana Soko, has said that water and sanitation is a public health concern and that Sierra Leone has a long way to go in meeting 66% global commitments in providing good water and sanitation service. He spoke in this interview with my colleague Theresa Thomas.
Our work primarily is focused on increasing access to water supply and sanitation services to citizens, like everywhere. So with our work, we have three layers of engagement. One is to be able to provide capacities to citizens so at least they are able to demand accountability from people who should be providing them the services. The other layer is to be able to engage and influence at the policy level, equally building capacity of government institutions to be able to deliver, but more specifically to be able to also have compelling evidences that also urges them to action and to be able to also see the need to be able to accelerate access to water supply and sanitation services. The third arm of it is to be able to provide interface, between the people who make the laws and the people who the laws do affect. So the people at the lower level who we also build capacity of, and those who at the top level who do provide the services are also brought together to be able to also interface, and then where citizens at the lower level do have the opportunity to also interface with their lawmakers and then ask questions where necessary. So part of our work basically, water supply and sanitation, to be more precise, is a public health concern. And so the more reason we focus on healthcare is the fact that, for every 5 healthcare, it's only 2 that do have access to, wash services. So that means if we still do have, at least, more of the healthcare facilities not having access to these services, we are not also scaling up infection prevention and control, but to be able to also ensure that people can be rest assured of going to the healthcare facilities and be safe, coming out of it without being sick. So that is why we talk about infection prevention and control at healthcare facility level. We did an assessment of healthcare facilities in 3 districts in Sierra Leone: Bonds, Port Loko, and Western area. So basically 4 districts, Western, urban, and rural. And it came out very clearly that most healthcare facilities, for example, even when they do have wash services, but there's no water just running out of it. So it's about accelerating access to water supply and sanitation services. But the most abysmal part of it is that, sanitation is also very, very much low. Mind you, we have also worked on sanitation, as a country, in 17 years, we are only able to have access to reach 16% of citizens with access to water supply and sanitation services. Sanitation generally. So it tells you that, for example, we still have a long way to go to meet our 66% global commitment as a country. So when you look at the statistics generally at the national picture, it tells you that 57% of Sierra Leoneans do have access to water supply, but it is only 16% that do have access to sanitation services. When I mean sanitation services, improved sanitation, like for example, toilet facilities. So it's about us really looking at raising the profile of these issues to be able to ensure that because open defecation is rampant, imagine we're having well over 28% of citizens defecating in the open. So that is also providing, serious health burden to government and equally citizens, by and large. So these are the more reasons why we feel these are very serious public health concerns, and the more reason to be able to also provide, the relevant policy advocacy and influencing for government to be able to take action.
Well, ending that interview with my colleague Theresa Thomas is the Executive Director of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene Network, WashNet, Musa and Sumana Soko. Residents at Wilberforce Barracks have raised concerns with regards to the poor dump sites system in their community. My colleague Rebecca Memesi Kamara has more on the story.
Even though a general cleaning of the barracks is carried out on every Saturday, not much is seen for it. The complaints tendered are many and have all almost gone unheard. Residents here say their community is gradually becoming uninhabitable. Wash facility at the barracks is also a nightmare. There is no dumping facility at the barracks, so residents have created one. An access road located at the left wing of the barracks near an illegal dump site. Many have been complaining about suffocating stench from the site, but nothing seems to have been done. Even though the pleas are still being made, fingers from all directions are pointed to the councillor for having done enough to keep the barracks tidy.
In general, as that one has been the flagship program of our worship the mayor, which caused that to go the length and breadth to see that each ward have a tricycle. And there are strategic areas where you can see dust bins. And we have like 8 to 10 women, including young men, that normally sweep in the morning. So I think we're doing our best to see that sanitation issue is treated with the utmost seriousness it deserves. That area, I didn't know they've used that place to be an illegal dump site, actually. I don't know, because initially, I'm the one that erected those 2 mailer tanks you see there. Okay. Yeah, those people are my people, actually. They are in my ward, but all their activities they do in the other ward.
Residents from other nearby communities like Tembertown, I am told, also come all the way to the barracks to dump their garbage. Huge swarms of mosquito breeding on stagnant water. A situation have given rise to malaria, dysentery, and all other forms of diseases that prey on unsanitary conditions. Sanitary conditions here are worse. A gamut of feces and other human bodily excreta also find their way into the mountain of dirt dumped here.
Now the place where they call Katanga now we by first now the place this.
Okay, family.
It really get for affect we bad because of right now toilets not there around. Everybody they wallow area now, everybody they can't go with toilet. If in Tangbeta, people that come out Tangbeta they can't up here for can't go with dirty for can't go with toilet. So really they affect we bad one because the smell when you see the cancer not really easy for we.
Okay.
The battalion RSM Kaya put on before and now it say anybody where it can low we all and but still that we know the able for forces RSM. Sorry, forces RSM because it give me what others say anybody where can't go to low all. But still, we know they able people are still accommodate and they can't go away dirty now. It's not really easy for we. Okay. The thing is not really easy. The dirty not really easy for we now. The place is smell. The place is too smell. We are let them help we. Let people government help we. Let's sorry NGO people. Let them help we. Let them able build for we toilets there now. Yeah, not really easy for we.
Okay.
If Papa government go help you for that day, the toilets with the sofa bembe. Look the toilet someone now. Now nets, now so the gas they meet we and the fly not to tea for talk. When we don't cry, say we want let Papa government member we and make this toilet for we not get toilet, we not get water. The dirty you look and pack. look us, look Dotty.
Okay.
We really let the suffer. Let them remember we.
It is an atmosphere of unpleasantness. More so, the smell, which is quite disgusting. Now that the rains have begun, it is anticipated that things might get worse. All attempts to get the commanding officer of the 5th Infantry Battalion, who oversees the barracks, to speak on the issue went futile. Multimedia Plus, Memesi Rebecca Kamara.
Well, if you're just tuning in, be reminded you're watching news coming to you from Multimedia Plus online television. We will now go for a short break. Stay tuned.
Production. Multimedia Plus, number one at the country. Multimedia Plus, beyond creativity, that now we mission. Multimedia Plus, we they bring to you so much quality. Multimedia Plus, number one, yeah. Quality video we there, photo shoot, voiceover we there, jingle and soundtrack we there, documentary, podcast we there, market and sales, audio production sell we there. Don't forget to Tapokana Multimedia Leash. Welcome to the land of creativity. Yeah, at the bongo bluff with the beauty. Yeah. You see me photo, see quality. If you see me video, see quality. If you listen me music, see quality. You go feel say na magic. See quality. Number 2 come with six na the place. Yes. After sabiti the customer the way.
Well, welcome back, viewer, to Multimedia Plus online television news. As we continue with our broadcast, Magistrate Hannah Boni of Magistrates Court Number 1 has sent Mohamed Kanu and 30 others to the Pademba Road Male Correctional Center for larceny. Let's now join our court reporter, Fatwata Bint Jah.
Mohamed Kanu, sent to Kamara, and 28 others were sent back to prison after being charged with larceny contrary to Section 2 of the Larceny Act of 1916, murder contrary to law, arson contrary to Section 2 of the Malicious Damage Act of 1861, and several others. They were charged for these offences after they burnt down the house and properties of Paramount Chief Baikoblo II of Marampa Chiefdom Lonsar. The complainant, Paramount Chief Baikoblo II, was asked to take the witness stand by the state prosecutor Adrian Fisher. While giving his testimony, Paramount Chief Baikoblo said that on the 29th and 30th day of April 2020, his house and properties worth 11 billion leones were burnt down. He also said that his nephew was also killed on that day. He was chased outside of the compound, mutilated and killed. His body was found outside of my compound, PC Baikoblo said. He explained before Magistrate Hannah Boni that he was inside his compound when the rioters attacked his house. They started throwing stones and started shouting, "Where is the Paramount Chief? Bring him out, let us kill him." He further explained. He said that his gate was locked at the time, but some people climbed the fence and they destroyed the gate. He said that his cars, which include his Range Rover Sport that cost $80,000, his 10-tire truck that worth $65,000, his Mercedes-Benz worth $70,000 were all destroyed. Lawyer Bangura, Lawyer J.M. Jengo, Lawyer Dumbi and other counsels were part of the defense team. Lawyer Bangura, whilst cross-examining the witness, said that the Paramount Chief was in hiding, so how can he see them while in hiding? The Paramount Chief said that he saw them because he was standing and he is a traditional ruler. Lawyer Jengo asked that the PC had stated that he is responsible for the peace and tranquility of the chiefdom. So if anything is to happen in the contrary, that means he will be held responsible. But the Paramount Chief was asked not to answer that by Magistrate Hannah Boni. Lawyer Jengo said to the Paramount Chief that all that he has said before the court was different from the statement that was made at the CID. The Paramount Chief said that both were the same. Lawyer Jengo requested for the statement to be made available before the Honorable Court. Lawyer Jengo also mentioned that the Paramount Chief is in the Mamiko compound, but the Paramount Chief said that he was not at Mamiko vicinity. Lawyer Jengo asked him if he was at Mamiko vicinity, so how can he be at his compound at the same time of the incident? Lawyer Django also said that the paramount chief had mentioned that he flew the house 5 minutes before they came closer, and that it was because they were close to the house that was why he fled. Lawyer Django asked him how can he then see the house burnt down. Lawyer Doumbia asked him if he had the documents of the cars that were burnt down. Paramount chief said that all was burned down. Lawyer Doumbia mentioned before the court that the paramount chief knew that there is a duplicate at the SLRSA, and the paramount chief said yes. Lawyer Doumbia asked the paramount chief where did they buy the cars, and the paramount chief replied that he bought some in town. And when asked by Lawyer Doumbia if the sellers are in town, paramount chief said that some are but others are not. The case was adjourned by Magistrate Anna Boni. For Multimedia Plus Online TV, Fatmata Binta Jallo reporting.
Well, let's quickly take our health sensitization as we continue to take preventive measures to keep ourselves safe in the midst of the coronavirus.
There is a global outbreak of a new coronavirus disease that is rapidly spreading to a number of countries around the world. Common signs and symptoms include cough, fever, shortness of breath, and difficulty in breathing. In severe cases, complications include pneumonia, and kidney failure may occur and possibly leads to death if left untreated. Everyone is at risk of getting this disease. The virus is spread through droplets produced during coughing or sneezing by a sick person. You can get the disease if you are in close contact with a person who has the disease or infected animals and animal products. Travel to areas affected by the outbreak is a risk to getting infected. To protect yourself and others, wash your hands frequently with soap and water or use alcohol-based hand rubs. Cook your meat products and eggs thoroughly. If you are infected, prevent spreading the disease by covering your mouth and nose when coughing or sneezing with flexed elbow or tissue, and wash your hands immediately after. If you suspect that you or a member of your family or anybody has the coronavirus, you should immediately seek medical care at the nearest health facility.
Well, welcome back, viewer, and we continue with the rest of our news stories for this hour with me, Lucy Imanet Aliu. The communications specialist for the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary School Education, Ibrahim Sharif, in an interview with Multimedia Plus Online Television, has said that since school reopens, the ministry continues to put measures in place to keep pupils safe in schools across the country. He was speaking to my colleague Rugiatu Sise in this interview.
The past weekend, the Transportation Working Group just transported over 500 children and teachers to their various locations, school locations, because they had moved away from those school locations just before the inter-district lockdown. So we were able to relocate them back to those schools locations across the country. And of course, we also have the training of staff and training materials working group. What they do is basically to train staff, including teachers, including auxiliary staff, including staff of the ministry, on how to manage the school system once schools reopen, because we are in a health emergency. These are not ordinary times. These are very challenging times, and so things are not going to be the same. Things are not going to run as if we are running a normal school. So we have to train people to be able to monitor everything, to be able to help the school authorities to for the safe operation of schools, and so that pillar is helping to do that. We also, and for us to make the decision, when schools closed down on March 31st, 2020, the first thing that the ministry did was to establish an education emergency task force. And that task force had 5 pillars. One of the pillars was the school reopening pillar. And the school reopening pillar was charged with the responsibility of advising government and the ministry on when we think it's safe to reopen schools. And so they were working in the background, seeing schools were closed. They came up with recommendations, and we took those, the leadership of the ministry, led by the minister, Honorable Dr. David Moinina Senge, took those recommendations to a critical stakeholders meeting. And the stakeholders included the Ministry of Health and Sanitation, the COVID-19 Emergency Operations Center, the Sierra Leone Teachers Union, the Teaching Service Commission, National Council of Head Teachers, the Conference of Principals of Secondary Schools, development partners, a lot of critical stakeholders. All of us came together and we discussed all of the details, and everybody said, yes, it is safe to reopen schools. So yes, the SLTU was part of this. They know everything that we are doing, and the TSC, which manages teacher affairs, are also part of this. Well, first, we are Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education. Our responsibility is to ensure that education is provided to children of pre-primary, primary, junior secondary, and senior secondary. We are not responsible for higher education, so we cannot do anything with that. That's the first reason. And number two, we have seen that Sierra Leone is a member country of the West African Examination Council, and we have other countries like Nigeria, Ghana, the Gambia, Liberia. These are all members of the same council. Now, a lot of people can agree that based on the data that is coming out, Nigeria and Ghana have more confirmed cases of coronavirus than Sierra Leone. And in fact, according to the latest data, Sierra Leone is even getting better because our confirmed cases are going down. So if Nigeria and Ghana, who have more confirmed cases, are preparing their children to take the same exam, why can't we do it as Sierra Leoneans? And secondly, if we decide that our children should not take these exams, especially those at the Becker and wax level, especially talking about the adolescent girls, what guarantee do we have that they will not fall out of school, that some will decide not to continue their education? So we don't want to mess with the future of our children. These are the future leaders of this country, and so there is a need for us to be able to motivate them, inspire them, and support them to be able to take this exam. And another reason is also this: if we say we are not going to allow these children to take this exam, next year there's going to be another batch of students coming from behind them. Where is the capacity for us to be able to conduct the exams for all of them? Government has already paid for all of these public exams. So if those who are managing the coronavirus in this country have said that it is safe to reopen schools for them to take these exams, we go by their advice.
Well, ending that interview with my colleague Urugiatu Sise is the communications specialist for the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary School Education, Ibrahim Sharif. Well, that's all we have time for in today's news broadcast here on Multimedia Plus Online Television. But before we close, here's a recap of the headlines. Magistrate Hannah Boni of Magistrate Court Number 1 has sent Mohamed Kanu and 30 others to Pademba Road Male Correctional Center for larceny. Residents within the Wilberforce Barracks raises concerns on improper dump sites in their community. The Executive Director of Water Sanitation and Hygiene Network, WashNet, Musa Ansumana Soko, has said that 57% of Sierra Leoneans do have access to water, but only 15% have access to sanitation. 28% of citizens defecate in the open. Well, thank you very much for sharing your time here with us at Multimedia Plus Online Television. Do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel at Multimedia Plus Online Television for more updates, news broadcasts, programs, and interviews. We're also on Facebook at Multimedia Plus. Please visit, like, and share. Until we meet again next time, I am Lucy Emanet.